Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Thanks for hanging out with me in the fish room again. Today we are going to talk about breeding and raising fry for Black Ruby Barbs. The methods that I'll teach you in this video, you can also use this for just about any other barbs that are out there. So let's go ahead and let's move into the video so you guys can see just the way that I do it. So you're ready to breed ruby black barbs. So the first thing you're really going to want to do is to set up a breeding tank for them. These guys are egg casters, so they just throw eggs absolutely everywhere. So any of the fish, including them in the tank, are going to eat the eggs once they're laid. So you want to get them in a separate tank and get a place where you can actually collect the eggs. We'll get to the setup in just a few minutes. So the next thing we want to know is we want to try to determine the difference between a male and a female. And these guys are a little bit easier because whenever the males are ready to breed, they get that deep ruby color. These guys are kind of hard to see right now because they're kind of stressed out from being in here as I'm about to put them in that tank. The other way that you can tell is the females are usually quite a bit plumper than the males are, especially when you start to condition them up. And that's one of the things you're going to need to do is you want to condition these guys up to get the female just absolutely full of eggs. And the best way to do that is with some type of live food. I like to use baby brine shrimp, but there's lots of others, different type of things you can use. If you don't have access to live, then the next best thing is to use frozen bloodworms or frozen daphnia or frozen brine shrimp, whatever you can get your hands on, and try to feed these guys 2 or 3 times a day to get those females big and fat. So let's go ahead and let's get these guys moved over into the breeding tank so I can show you guys how to set it up. Okay, so one of the very first things that we want to do when we're getting ready to set up our breeding tank is we need to soften the water and we need to get some tannins in the water. And there's multiple ways you can do that. One of the easiest ways is just to take a bunch of oak leaves and crush them up and put them in there and let them decay. They'll get the water with a lot of tannins pretty quickly, but it'll take a little bit for the pH to drop. But a quicker way to do that is to actually run peat through some type of filter. As you can see here, this is the type of peat that I use. I'll link this down below. This is a Sera brand, super peat. You don't want to use the peat that you just find at a like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, that stuff that's actually made for the garden, because that usually has other type of ingredients in it. This stuff is specifically made just for the aquarium hobby, so this is the stuff that I like to use. And then the next thing we use along with that is a box filter. Yeah, an old school box filter. These things are actually kind of hard to find. I'll link this down below. You can find these on Amazon. Since we're using the small 5-gallon aquarium, I'm using one of these ones that are really small, and then we're going to use the filter floss to go along with it. So we're going to go ahead and pack that filter floss in there, and then we're going to pack that peat in there, get that lid back on there, and take this thing over to the tank and get it set up and let it run for a while. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is, since I'm using a small aquarium, it's a little bit easier to do it this way. I'm going to take this plastic canvas material. I'll link this down below where you guys can actually buy this stuff from. It's just simple, just a plastic stuff that's mesh. It comes in different size grids, but it really doesn't matter as long as the adult fish don't have the ability to get through there, because this is what's going to block them from getting to the eggs. We're going to take this thing and we're going to cut it almost the exact size of the bottom of the tank. That way the eggs will just drop right through it. So let's go ahead and let's go over to the tank so we can see exactly what it looks like when we got it all set up. Alright, now we can easily see the difference between the male and the females. Now that these guys have had a chance to settle down, you can see that this male, there's 3 of them in there, just absolutely, their coloration is strikingly beautiful with that bright red face. Just absolutely gorgeous. You can see that we've got the thing set up. We've got them in 100% rainwater right now, which is the quickest way to get them to spawn. If you don't have rainwater, you can always use RO water. I've just found it doesn't work quite as well. And sometimes they'll just spawn in regular tap water. It kind of just depends on how your water is. A lot of the times these guys will spawn just in your normal tank, but if you don't have some type of way to protect the eggs, they're going to eat them, or something else in the tank's going to eat them. So we've also got there back in the back, we've got a sponge filter. I'm sorry. We've actually got a box filter going that has the peat moss that I told you about going in it as we're slowly softening the water up for them. I've also provided them a place, some Java moss. Sometimes they like to spawn in there, but it also provides a place for the females to get away when the males are driving them nuts. Like you can see them right now, they're just absolutely going crazy. Whenever the males get on that coloring like that, that means they are ready to spawn, and that's why he's going just crazy right now. And then down at the bottom, you can see that we've used that plastic craft material to create a space so that the eggs can fall through. You can see how the holes are in it, so it's very, very easy for the eggs to drop through. We've got these guys in a 10-gallon tank. There's also a matin filter that's going back in the back. That's not really necessary. There's a lot of different ways that you could do this. If you wanted to do this in like a 5-gallon bucket, you could do the same thing. You would still need to use some type of either this craft material for the eggs to fall through, or you could put some type of pebbles or, you know, like river stones in there so that, oh, you can see one of them right there are already trying to start spawning. So you can use the rocks and stuff at the bottom. That way when they lay the eggs, it'll fall into those cracks. These eggs usually take about 24 to 48 hours to hatch. So if you're going to put them in something like that, you don't have the ability to look in there to see if there's eggs. So I would leave them in there probably a minimum of 4 days to give them a chance to spawn a few times. If they were to lay eggs the first day, they're going to hatch most likely the second day. And by that 4th or 5th day, you're going to have fry that are just about ready to eat, because you don't want to leave them in there too long. Because if you don't provide them some type of infusoria or some other type of a small food, those babies are going to die. And I like to remove my babies as soon as possible so that I can feed them. So we're going to go ahead and let these guys go, and we'll check this tank tomorrow and see how many eggs we got. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Sometimes these guys' eggs are kind of sensitive to light. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to dim this tank some. I'm going to actually take just a black covering I have up here, and I'm going to slide it over the top. And then you can see I've created a much darker area for them to still be able to spawn. They'll still be able to see, you know, that the sunlight is out, but it's going to provide protection from those eggs, because those eggs can be light sensitive, much like Neon's eggs are. So we're going to go ahead and leave these guys and check on them tomorrow. Kind of hard to see, but there's some eggs back there in the back. It's kind of hard to tell how many there are because there's a lot of muck and stuff in the water. But occasionally, if you look, you'll see a fry swim by. So there's actually been some that have actually already hatched. So I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna siphon them out. You've always got two choices. You can leave them in here and remove the parents and then hatch them in here. The problem is it's kind of difficult feeding them in such a big body of water. Or you can siphon them off, move them to a smaller container so that you can watch them more carefully, see when they hatch, and feed them. So you've always got that option. Just know that doing it this way is a lot more time consuming and it's a lot more tedious to do. But that's the way that I like to do it. If I was trying to do it in some type of mass thing, I would definitely do it differently, because this does take time. So let's go ahead and let's get those eggs siphoned off, and let's get them moved over to the fry hatchery. Okay, so we got all of the eggs removed, and we got them put in this little container. This is the fry hatchery that I have. I've actually got 2 of them now, side by side. If you guys want to know more about this or see how I made it, I'll link that video above. This thing has made my life so incredibly easier when it deals with hatching eggs and raising up fry. Okay, so again, this is 100% rainwater, and as you can see, the dripper for this one I have turned off because I don't want to get anything in here other than rainwater. But once the fry hatch, I'll turn that on a little bit and get it to dripping so I can get them acclimated off of rainwater and back onto tap water. And so these guys usually take about 24 hours to hatch. Now what I would typically do with any eggs that I get, you know, for instance, like over here we've got Angelfish eggs. You can see that I've got them in a little bit of a methylene blue solution, because these guys take about 3 days to hatch. but the tetras typically hatch within 24 hours. And I've already noticed that there's 1 or 2 that have already hatched, and I don't like fry to be in methylene blue because I've lost them before, because I think it's toxic to them at higher amounts. So we're just going to leave them in the 100% rainwater, and most of these guys should be hatched out tomorrow. Okay, so if you look in here, you can see some little bitty tiny babies. So the eggs have hatched. And so these guys will be ready to be fed probably tomorrow. Usually after about 3 days after they hatch, that egg yolk gets all used up. And so right now what we have them in, we still have them in the rainwater, because again I allowed the eggs to hatch out into the rainwater. And what I'm currently doing is, you can see on the other drippers are going, and on this dripper I just have it just barely turned on, so it's just dripping just a little bit here and there. I'm gonna let that go for about 5 or 6 hours to slowly convert this rainwater into the regular tap water that I use on all my tanks. And then after that time, I'll just turn that thing on full blast, so this thing is constantly replacing water in here. And so what we're going to do in a couple of days is we'll start feeding these guys golden pearls. Let me show you how we do that. Okay, so what I like to use is golden pearls. This is just a mixture of stuff. You can see all the different ingredients they put in it, but this stuff is specially made so that it's extremely small, so even the smallest of fish can actually eat it. And also the way it's prepared is it's made so that this stuff floats on the surface. And again, once you put it in there, it is so tiny you can't see it, but you could, right as you put it in, it'll spread real quickly all over the surface, and then you kind of can't even see it again. I'll link this above so you guys can find this. This stuff comes in all sorts of different sizes. Like this one is 5 to 50 microns. It's the smallest that there is. If you wanted to raise your fry up on this stuff, you could buy all the different sizes in between and just gradually move your fish up. But I like to get mine on baby brine shrimp as fast as possible because that yolk sac that's produced by the brine shrimp is just fantastic for baby fish and their health and their ability to grow fast. And so let's go ahead and let's feed them so you can see kind of how this stuff works. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to remove the golden pearls and put them in a different container that has a lid on it, like this one. That way I can screw this on tightly, because anytime I have powdered food that has a Ziploc top, I always forget to tighten it well enough, and moisture gets in there, and then it funguses, and then I lose it all. So I take this, and I filled this up, you know, maybe halfway, because this stuff will last forever. And then I take the bag and I seal it good, and I put it in the refrigerator, so that if I mess this up, I know I've still got some rest in there. Some of the Hikari first bites that you use, that happens to me all the time. And so what I like to do is, this is what one of my subscribers actually showed me, is just this fantastic way of feeding this stuff, because it's so fine. What I've done is, you can see I actually had this Velcroed here so that I don't lose it. This is one of my wife's fancy makeup brushes. I think this is actually a Clinique brand, so this is probably like $5,000 or more. So I like to use one of these because this is great for putting on makeup, because it picks up really fine dust. So you can just take this and just lightly put it in here, and then you can see how it just gets all over it. And then if you just tap it, it'll just rain that stuff down, and that way you can control easier how much of this stuff you let off. Because if you try to dump this stuff in here into the water, and any of those little hard pieces fall in there, they're just going to sink to the bottom. You want this stuff to actually land on the water and float, so that the fry can see it, and this stuff will float for a long time. So we'll just dip it in there, get a little bit on there like that, tap it off a little bit so we don't have too much, and then we just come over here to this. So we just come over to it like this, and then we just tap it lightly on the side, and we can see that it just kind of rains the stuff down. Or you can kind of take your finger in it like this and flick it a little bit, and you can just flick it onto the water like that. And again, once that stuff hits the water, it's like almost impossible to see because it's so fine. But this is really just a great way. If you don't have one of these, you can get maybe just like a simple cheap paintbrush, you know, the little small kind like the little kids paint by number. Just something like that. That's a really easy way to distribute this stuff to the fish. Okay, so we're gonna feed them these golden pearls. We're gonna try to do it at least 3 times a day, and then after about 3 days of feeding them, they should be big enough at that time to be able to take baby brine shrimp. All right, so you guys can see in here now, these guys are about 10 or 11 days old. Again, after the 3 days of feeding them the golden pearls, I moved them over to baby brine shrimp. So I've been feeding them baby brine shrimp at least 2 or 3 times every single day. If you look in there, you can see that they've kind of got pink bellies right now. That's how you can tell that they've got food in them. You pretty much want those bellies always to look like that, or even a little bit fuller. So the great thing is once you get these guys onto baby brine shrimp, it's easy after that. You just continue to feed them that baby brine shrimp 2 or 3 times a day, and that'll be the fastest way that you can grow them up. I would suggest when they get about a ½ inch or so longer, you probably want to move them to something a little bit bigger. But again, they're still going to be pretty small, so you don't want to bring them into anything that can fit them into their mouth, or they'll be quickly eaten up. So if you guys have got any questions or comments, be sure and leave them down below. So thanks again, guys, and God bless.